sensitive subjects, and I would probably say if you are under 14, you might want to skip over this one, just because of the nature of true crime. But I hope that you guys are excited, and let's just get started. Real quick before we jump into the video, please don't forget that if you are looking for more true crime content or any other ASMR content from me, I do have a Patreon that is always linked down below in the description box, where I do more personal videos, story times, New York accent, get ready with me's, things like that. So you are welcome to check out the link in the description box to sign up for Patreon and join the family over there. You get 3 or 4 videos per month for $5. Alright, I got my makeup sponge. Here, and I'm just going to dab on my foundation and things while we talk, okay? So our story tonight is about a Florida killer clown that was unmasked after 27 years. So Marlene Warren, 40 years of age, and her son Joe Aarons, 21, were enjoying just a normal day at their home in Wellington Aero Club community in Florida. Joe was 21 years old at the time and was Marlene's son from a previous marriage. Get my foundation. So, at the time of our case, our story, Miss Marlene was married to a man named Michael Warren, who owned Bergen Motorists in West Palm Beach, Florida. Marlene unfortunately, that wouldn't be the case. So the day that our case takes place was a normal day for this family. Michael was at work at the Bargain Motors that he owned with Marlene. And Marlene and her son Joe were just kind of hanging out in the house, and she was preparing dinner for Joe and a couple of his buddies that were also over, just watching TV, hanging out. So Marlene was cooking in the kitchen when she heard a knock at the door, and Joe and his buddies were in the living room that was like right off of the kitchen. So Joe recalls also, hearing that doorbell, a door knock, and just assumed that his mother would be answering it. They were not expecting any company at the time, but she thought maybe it was a neighbor or somebody delivering the paper, somebody selling something. So Joe said that he could hear his mother go to the door, and Marlene opens the door. While she opens the door, she finds a person standing there dressed fully in a clown costume. And at this point, she was a little bit startled, and Joe, her son, must have heard it in her voice and kind of came to the door as well. And he recalls this person, this clown, to be kind of a manly stature. And he said even though the clown had a manly stature, this person had a very small build, but kind of like manly looking hands and shoulders and whatnot. So this clown had white face paint, a red nose, orange wig, and a painted on smile. In one hand, the clown was holding a flower arrangement, and in the other was holding multiple balloons. One of the balloons read, "You are the greatest." After Marlene read the balloon aloud, because the clown kind of handed it towards her, so she knew this was for her. The clown wasn't there for somebody else. She read it aloud and looked at her son Joe and said, "How nice." Next thing Joe heard, as he turned away to kind of walk back to go be with his friends, he heard a loud gunshot. And when he turned, he saw his mother lying in the doorway, starting to bleed. And of course, he automatically fell to the floor and started to try and help her. And as he glared up to kind of see, what was going on, to see where this clown was, as he glared up with his eyes from kneeling down, trying to stop the bleeding and calling 911 for his mother, he said that he could see the clown walking up the driveway, totally calm, like nothing had just happened. The vehicle that the clown was driving was parked right in their driveway, and it was a white Chrysler LeBron. Joe tried to get a license plate for the police, but there was no license plate at all on the vehicle. So at this point, all he knows is that his mother has been shot, and she was shot in the neck and in the head, and she was losing a lot of blood very fast. And all I know is this random clown with white face paint and a painted on smile and orange hair where she unfortunately died from her injuries 2 days later. She had wounds to the head and neck. The investigating officers were baffled with how little evidence they had to go on with this case. And, Joe told him everything he could possibly tell him, but there wasn't any enemies that Marlene had. There wasn't any, arguing among neighbors. From what met the eye, her and Michael were in a very happy, loving relationship, marriage. They had businesses that were thriving, and nobody really knew who would want to do this to Marlene, and who would go as far as dressing up as a clown and have the gall to park their vehicle in their driveway and just walk away like nothing had happened, like they were not fazed at all by what they just did to this woman in front of her son. So the investigating officers on the case just continued to work hard with the information that they did have. The lead investigator said, and I quote, "How often does a clown knock on a door and shoot someone?" A few hours after Marlene's murder, police received a tip that was an anonymous woman's voice that said, quote, "You may want to ask Michael Warren and Sheila Keene a few questions." Up until this point, police had no knowledge of anybody by the name of Sheila Keene and what connection she would have to the family. When Michael was called home and got the news that his wife was shot dead in their driveway by a clown, he was obviously very upset and had all of these signs of, that one should have a reaction that you would think a loving husband would have. Seemed, very upset, got physically ill. And when he was asked about his whereabouts, he said that he had left work and was on his way to Calden Racecourse in Miami Gardens and denied any role in his wife's murder. Now, when police look further into Sheila Keene, they uncovered that Sheila had worked at the car automotive center that Michael and Marlene owned together. It came about that Michael and Sheila were in fact having a long-term affair. At the time Marlene did become aware, so right around the time she was killed, about a month prior, she was made aware of this affair. We don't know exactly how, but she was made aware, and she did let some of her family members know. She did not tell her son, Joe, because she didn't want to upset him until she knew the course of action that she was going to take to leave Michael. So some of Marlene's family's members had disclosed to police that she did indeed have plans to leave Michael, but feared the consequences, as his car lot and many other properties that they owned together were all in Marlene's name. And to Michael, this was like everything to him, more important than family, friendship, marriage. His businesses and his properties were everything. She reportedly told her mother, quote, "If anything happens to me, Michael done it," end quote. The mistress, Sheila, was questioned very early on by the lead detective. They wasted no time. As soon as they found out about her and found out about this alleged affair, they immediately vehicle abandoned nearby with fragments of orange wig hairs in the front seat. Also, it was determined that Sheila had previously worn a clown's outfit in a recent photo for a promotion for the auto shop that she worked at for Mike and Marlene. They also have clerks from West Palm Beach, Florida costume shop pick Sheila in a photo lineup as a woman who bought a clown outfit. And that was actually 2 days prior to the murder. So she couldn't say that it was the clown outfit that she wore in the promo photos because those promo photos were took months in advance. So, and it wasn't a full like clown costume in these photos. It was kind of more like, I have a photo that I'll insert, but it was more just a flannel with, a little bit of clown makeup, but not a whole clown costume from head to toe with the wig and everything. So the police have these clerks putting her at the store purchasing a entire clown costume 2 days before Marlene was shot to death by a clown. In addition to that, police also had Publix store employees report that 90 minutes before the shooting, a woman matching Sheila's description came into the store and went right to the bouquet of flowers, bought herself a bouquet of flowers and multiple balloons. And if you remember, the clown who shot Marlene was holding a bouquet of flowers in one hand and balloons in the other. It may be one of the biggest discoveries of all. During a search, a sweep through Miss Sheila's apartment, they were able to uncover some orange wig hairs, the same ones that were found in the white Chevy vehicle that was found abandoned, were found in Sheila's apartment. So back at the time of her murder, they unfortunately didn't have the kind of DNA evidence and testing that we have today. So even though they had, Publix employees saying that she went and got, the balloons and the bouquet, and uncovered because of her murder. So after his jail stint for racketeering and odometer fraud, him and Sheila married, and once, the investigation reopened, they were still together, and Michael was 100% fully supportive of Sheila and stood by her side throughout everything. All these years later, 2015, they were able to perform DNA testing on the hair fibers that were found at Sheila's apartment. Without giving specifics, lead detective Paige McLean told reporters, quote, "The DNA evidence made a world of a difference," end quote. In cold cases, we have a big puzzle. A lot of it was already filled in by the previous detectives on the case. We just needed a few little missing pieces, which we did uncover with new DNA testing. The case wasn't strong enough 30 years ago, but it is today. She said, quote, "There is one thing to think someone did it, and another to know someone did and be able to prove it in a court of law." When Michael was questioned by reporters after his wife was indicted, he said, and I quote, "How did they ever jet up enough BS evidence to get a grand jury to indict on this?" End quote. So as I had listed for you guys before, there was a ton of evidence to tie Sheila to the murder. Also, newly found information, an old employee of Michael and Marlene's came forward, and it was an employee of the auto shop, the Parkin auto shop, and they told investigators that 45 days before the murder, this employee, Mike and Sheila, drove to pick up a stolen white Chrysler LeBron, which was the same vehicle that was used to drive to murder Marlene. The employee said that they were paid off to never speak about the little trip to pick up this vehicle ever again. In previous interviews, the time of the murder, Sheila denied ever being in such a vehicle. So back then, all those years ago, when she was originally asked by police, and when she had to give her alibi, she lied and said that she didn't even know what the vehicle looked like, that she had never heard of that vehicle before. this is all almost finally over, I can have some peace in my heart. But it brings up old hard memories. I've been crying a lot, but I'm happy to finally see justice for my daughter. End quote. And my friends was the case of Marlene unmasking a killer clown after 27 years. Let me know what you think about this case. I hope that it's able to, be finalized soon and not be drug on any longer. She deserves to be behind bars for what she did. It's wrong on so many levels.